I just want to say this again because it is so present in our lives. Life is hard. We have the 3 P's, the fact that life is not permanent, it's not perfect, and it's not personal, making our experiences hard. It's just the reality of how things are. It's not that way all the time, but there's that underlying sense of it. And when we limit ourselves to our resources that principally arise from instinct and habit, when we live mostly in reactive mode, we tend to make life even harder. This is when 2 of our 5 characteristics of our enoughness, avoid and approach, begin to dominate our experiences in ways that are not helpful. Avoid and approach are very important. We have to have them. But when we end up defaulting to them, when we mistake their role for helping us navigate life on a day-to-day basis, when we mistake their role in helping us survive, for being resources for thriving and evolving, then we tend to overwork them, to stretch them beyond their capacities, and we miss out on the opportunities to evolve, and we in fact make life harder. So alternatively, when we can access and cultivate our resources that enable evolving and thriving, the resources of awareness, self-regulation, and learning, then we're less likely to make life harder and more likely to fully experience living a human life, being fully present for the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. Or as our longtime friend Dana Fald says in one of her poems, waking up is what we were born to do. So overemphasis on avoid and approach arise more out of instinct, habit, and reactivity. And it's not to say that instinct, habit, and reactivity are necessarily bad. It's just when they're applied indiscriminately, when they're our default go-to almost all the time, that's when they become problematic. And when we're in that place of reactivity, we have limited awareness, and we have a limited capacity for forming an intention about how we're going to show up. We're in default mode as opposed to an intending mode. And over time, when we spend all these experiences in reactive mode, just in this place of default, then our characteristics of avoid and approach degrade into fear. Avoid degrades into fear. And approach degrades into being obsessed with acquiring and accomplishing. Thinking that somehow, if we just can get that next larger house, or that next particular toy, or that next automobile, or that next electronic device, that'll somehow make life easier. Or if we can only add this to our resume, if I can accomplish such and such, if I can get this promotion, if I can get such and such done. It's not that acquiring or accomplishing are necessarily bad. It's when we default to them as ways of filling up our lives instead of turning toward awareness and self-regulation and learning. So let's do a little exercise with this, a little reflection. I sent out this diagram that has these 5 ranges of different attitudes and behaviors, ways of being. And on the left-hand side of each of these ranges is analyzing, fixing, and controlling on one range. Doing, being busy. Landing in a place of distraction. Allowing our minds to flit from one thing to another, our attention to roll from one thing to another. Another characteristic on the left-hand side is this believing our own thoughts, believing our own stories. And finally, we also are likely to get tangled up in our emotions, allow our emotions to overwhelm us. It's not that emotions are bad or that analyzing, fixing, and controlling are bad. It's when we default to them indiscriminately. So as I say each of these again, I'll invite you to choose one to pay attention to, and we're going to explore in a little more depth. So analyzing, fixing, and controlling, doing, being distractible, believing our thoughts, and entangled in our emotions themselves. And selecting one of these and thinking of 1 or 2 examples of when this characteristic, this resource, this behavior has been skillful. You've used it effectively. When it's been a productive approach to your life. And letting go of those examples, turn now to experiences when you were unskillful with this particular left side behavior or attitude. When it became a problem, when it led to making life even harder, perhaps even suffering. And with this difficult and struggling example, notice how you're likely to have landed there out of default, reactivity, instinct, habit. These are simply ways that we're human. We're really complicated. We're really complex. We just look at these 5 ranges and see all the different possibilities there. And we want all the possibilities. And what's especially helpful is when we're able to choose, when we have enough space to choose, oh, this is a time for analyzing. No, this is a time for allowing. Where do I want to land on that range? So let's roll into a little practice here. As we so often do after these intense cognitive experiences, taking a couple of deep breaths and just letting go of all of it. Oh my. and softening a bit. Softening all over. Settling in. And allowing your attention to go to your breathing. Greeting this old friend, this reliable resource that we turn to so often. Appreciating this resource, offering our breathing a little kindness for being so persistently present to support us. And concentrating our attention particularly on the in-breath and letting go, easing on the out-breath. Noticing if there's any sense of ease or tranquility creeping in around the edges as we continue our breathing, continuing our noticing our breathing in the barest possible way. Perhaps you might even be noticing a sense of spaciousness. Perhaps ease and freedom. A sense of how accessible making your own choices is in this experience. Perhaps noticing a sense of connectedness to self. And out of that sense of connectedness, perhaps opening your heart with patience, attention, and empathy to whatever you're feeling in this moment. Appreciating your capacity, your willingness to engage with this experience right now.